Miami fought their way back quite literally to win a heated game in Houston for one of their strongest showings of the season. We'll break down the big performances and bizarre ending on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. We have a great show for you today. The Heat get a high-quality win on the road. We'll talk about Tyler Herro's all-star case, hand out credit cookies, and look ahead to some lineup decisions that Erik Spoelstra might have to make soon. But first, a wild ending to a very fun basketball game. The Heat come back from 12 points down in the third quarter, making most of their run after Nikola Jovic entered the game. Jovic hits a huge three-pointer to go up 4 with 47 seconds left in this game. Then the Rockets melt down. Fred VanVleet gets ejected after arguing a 5-second call. And then a few seconds later, Amen Thompson, for no reason, seemingly throws Tyler Herro to the ground. And that turns into an all-out bench-clearing brawl. Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Ime Udoka, Tyler Herro, Terry Rozier, they're all ejected with 36 seconds left in the game. Heat go on to win 104-100. But what did you see with the fight, and why do you think that Tyler Herro even got ejected?
Well, my feeling is, and we were talking about this before we started recording, like they were already a little heated. The Heat had come back, obviously, and so tempers were starting to flare a little bit. You know that the Rockets are feisty. They're a good defensive team. They play with a chip on their shoulder because, you know, it's just the way they've been able to carve out their identity this season and for the last couple of seasons since Udoka took over as coach. And on the 5-second violation, it looked like Mark Davis, the chief referee, the head referee, might have jumped the gun just a tad on making that turnover call. And VanVleet was arguing, and he inadvertently brushes or kind of touches Davis in the shoulder. Next thing you know, that leads to the instant ejection. So I think they were already kind of pissed off about that. And then on the ensuing play, as you pointed out, you know, they're just jawing back and forth. Thompson and Herro are kind of talking there. Something must have been said. Like Herro must have said something. Like it was pretty evident that he was holding Herro in a way that Herro didn't want to be held. He was kind of pushing him off, and I guess he just said something that pissed Thompson off to a high degree. And Thompson just lost it. I don't think the last time I can recall seeing a player get flipped like that out of nowhere. And maybe that's just because Herro's on the smaller side or maybe a little bit lighter, but whatever it was, like I just haven't seen that in quite some time.
So Tyler is sort of in his chest. He's doing that thing that, you know, a lot of defenders will do where they kind of lower their body and they kind of put a shoulder into the stomach area as, you know, trying to kind of wall him off from wherever he's trying to go. And they're kind of turning a little bit there. And then all of a sudden, like Amen Thompson gets Tyler Herro by the collar of his jersey, like a why I oughta kind of like, I don't know, like he's going to like throw him up against the wall somewhere. Right. And he's got him by the collar of his jersey. And then Tyler does say something.
Of course.
And then he just throws him, just flips him to the ground. And then you see Terry Rozier coming in full spear tackle from the sideline. He came in right away. Nikola Jovic gets in on it. And then the bench is clear and it's a whole brawl. And then my favorite part about it is that Tyler Herro is walking away and him and Nico are like dapping up, walking away like, we got him, like laughing about it. And Jalen Green is still heated. Ime Udoka is arguing vociferously with the refs. He gets ejected. Like the Rockets are PO'd and the Miami Heat are walking away laughing from the situation. And if you want to wonder if like the Miami Heat culture thing and the meanest, nastiest, dirtiest team stuff is fully dead, it's not fully dead. There's still that spark there because they were loving it. This was like the highlight of their night, not the win, the fact that they got into a fight.
Well, I don't know about that. I think they probably prefer the win, but the fact that they did get under their skin and were able to piss them off, and Tyler jawing at the crowd, just going at it, kind of loving the moment that they were able to get, Thompson ejected, that they were able to piss them off. Nico having just hit that big three. Like there was certainly relishing in the moment, and the fact that they were able to come back and be able to, again, just take control of the game and wind up pissing off half the Rockets, or maybe all the Rockets roster in the process. It was pretty hilarious. I just, to see Herro kind of just clapping it up and just kind of like talking to the crowd, and God, I would pay for the opportunity to hear what it was.
There was a couple of fans sideline that he was talking to. And I would pay a lot of money to figure out what that conversation was. He ends up getting ejected weirdly. I don't know why he got ejected. I think it was just Mark Davis. Everybody that was just involved a little bit. Yeah. We're getting rid of you. There's 30 seconds left in this game. Let's just it doesn't matter. Let's just get rid of the hotter heads and just let the cool heads finish this game. I would be very surprised if Tyler Herro was suspended because of this. Although because you're ejected, you automatically have to be reviewed for suspension and any further penalties. I'd be very surprised if he was going to miss Miami's next game Wednesday against the Pelicans at home. I would be very surprised if Amen Thompson was not suspended for multiple games after this. So we'll see what happens there. Here's the part that's really interesting to me, David.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler misses his 5th straight game with a quote-unquote stomach illness or whatever we're supposed to believe. This was the first fight of the Jimmy Butler era that didn't directly involve Jimmy Butler.
Is it?
I can't recall another one. I could be wrong, and if people listening comment, let me know. And I'm sorry if I'm forgetting something, but it feels like if Jimmy Butler isn't causing a lot of the fights,
Duncan and Jaylen Brown in the playoffs, right?
But Jimmy Butler was at least in the game.
Sure.
So yeah, so maybe directly involved wasn't the right way to phrase it, but the first time that the Heat were in a fight and Jimmy Butler wasn't around, either directly involved in it or at least on the court or on the sideline in the game.
Yeah, that's fair.
The fact that they did this without Jimmy Butler too, who is sort of the guy who gets under guys' skin.
Yes,
I don't know what it means. There's some sort of connection that we can make between is the Jimmy Butler era over because the Miami Heat are I don't want to go so far as to stretch it that way, but it is interesting.
I like it. I'll be happy to see it when Bam is somebody who does this, because Bam is just like everybody's friend, and he's just, and some fans have criticized him for it. I don't know if I'm quite there yet, but he's really, really calm out there. Yeah, he'll talk and everything else like that, but he gets along with so many dudes around the league that he's just not the type to ever really get under your skin. For all the fans in New York and Boston and everywhere else that complain about the illegal screens and he's the dirtiest player in the league, etc. The fans might think so. Players love Bam. Rarely do we see anybody try to challenge Bam or attack him or anything like that, because he's an eminently likable fellow. But when Bam starts doing those kind of Jimmy-like tactics of pissing people off and getting your skin and just going to that point and maybe even crossing that line that you're not supposed to cross, which is what I think Tyler did, is he probably just said something to Thompson that just crossed the line. That's when I'd be like, okay, the culture's okay. They're in good hands, because that's, for all the other things that he does well in terms of being the keeper of the culture, for him to be able to just adopt that sort of just dirty to the point of it pisses people off mentality, that would be another level altogether. But you know what?
Dwayne Wade was never like that, though, right? The star isn't really. But again, Jimmy Butler's the first star who's also the instigator. That's sort of that's a realm sort of for the Dylan Brookses and the Jose Alvarados of the world. Not really your star player. You don't see LeBron James doing this stuff. It's Lance Stevenson blowing in LeBron's ear, not vice versa. Right. So I'm okay with Bam not necessarily being it. It is surprising that Tyler Herro is doing it. That is very surprising. But there is sort of an era of annoying kid in the pickup game who you can't figure out why he has the most points on the court.
Yeah.
But he knows why, and he's letting you know that he has all the points.
Oh, yeah.
There is an annoying kind of aspect to Tyler Herro, for sure. And I mean that in the greatest compliment possible, because he's, 6'4" guy who's just shooting threes, and he's wait, he got to the rim again, and now he's drawing fouls, and he's all up in your grill when he's feeling it. And I'm here for it. If he's trash talking like that, I'm here for it.
He does. He talks like,
Oh yeah,
like he hits that
chirps.
fade away, and he kind of runs back, and he's like letting guys, it's gonna be that kind of night, or et cetera. Again, I'm
He's got the
imagining kind of,
scowl and like that,
yeah,
and I think what really pisses opponents off is when he starts laughing and smiling.
oh yeah. But we've seen that before when he gets that, like when you see somebody get a technical and he starts clapping at them, et
Yep.
cetera. Like that kind of stuff is just, again, it's little kid annoying, but it's so much fun to watch, to be 100% honest with you. So it was great. Really good win to, I mean, to the point I made earlier, I think it was one of Miami's best wins of the season, because not only did they come back, but shorthanded as they were without Duncan Robinson and Jimmy in the lineup. So they're down 2 starters. They have to kind of piece together the starting lineup with Kevin Love in there. It didn't really work, but they were able to come back. They were down double digits in the second half, and they were able to just go on a nice run in the fourth quarter. And again, the cherry on top was pissing off the Rockets roster to the degree that they did, but they played a great brand of basketball, like great defense, great offense where they needed it most, and some key contributions I know we'll talk about in the next segment.
The Heat have won 3 of their last 4 games, 3-2 without Jimmy Butler in those last 5 games. I agree with you. Based on the opponent, the circumstances, again, no Jimmy Butler, second night of back-to-back on the road against the 3rd seed in the Western Conference, a very good Houston Rockets team that was complete. You could argue that this was Miami's best win of the season. I think it would probably be this one and the Cleveland Cavaliers one from earlier in the year. Nikola Jovic swung the game with his energy, and he's going to get some credit cookies coming his way. Who else is joining Nico in the cookie circle? Title TBD on that. That's all coming up next here on Locked On Heat.
I'd go with cookie sheet on that, like
cookie sheet is the baking sheet. Who's joining him on the baking sheet?
Yeah,
that's so much better.
Anyway,
you know what else works?
Yes, who's got their hands in the cookie jar?
Who's got their hands in the cookie jar? That's it. Okay, let's go.
All right, let's workshop this during the episode. This is exactly the right time to do it. But you know what else is the right time? No, well, we got an ad read to do. What are you talking about? Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control of the bedroom, then Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything's delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com. That's rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes about 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. Well, David, it's another Miami Heat win, which means it's time for the tastiest Locked On Heat segment. It's time to find out who's got their hands in the cookie jar. It works. Who's got their hands in the cookie jar? We've got 10 credit cookies to hand out. David, hit me with your 10, and we'll talk about why they got them.
For Miami's win and everything else like that, there were some performances that were a little off kilter, but I have 3 players who I think take on the bulk of, no, not just the bulk. They take on all 10 of these cookies. And I'm starting off with Tyler Herro. We talked about him, 27 points, 11 points in the third quarter, 6 in the fourth, hitting big shots, doing things to piss off Rockets players. Had a really great overall game too, making plays for others, had 6 rebounds, 9 assists on the night too. So great night for him, 27 total points. He gets 4 cookies. You can make an argument and perhaps he deserves more. But I also like the performance from Nikola Jovic. And I think he was kind of the star to me of the night. As good a big a night as Herro had, I think Jovic's minutes were almost as impactful. Like his just willingness to take the shot is such an evolution from the player that he was. And that last 3-pointer he hit kind of reminded me, watching him shoot the ball, of like Duncan Robinson or a taller version of that, Davis Bertans, like a guy who's just so much more comfortable taking the 3-point shot. If you recall the early games of the season, he would just beat his head in. He was always frustrated when the shots wouldn't fall. And you could tell he was agonizing over those shots not hitting the way that he expected them to. And now we're starting to see this evolution of his, where he's so much more comfortable taking the 3-point shot. There was even one play there where he's kind of waiting for the ball in the corner, and Terry Rozier looks him off to take an ill-advised three-pointer, and of course that one winds up rimming out because Terry just didn't have it in the second half. And I'm thinking to myself, get it to Nico. He's going to hit that shot. And on that last shot he took, I was like, oh, that's game. Like I knew he was going to hit that shot. He had his feet set. He was comfortable. The smooth release. He's gotten so much better as a three-point shooter, and you can really tell he's put in the work.
That's a tough shot. That's a tough shot when you're in that right corner and you got to come up to that right break and you got to hit that. You got to turn your body. You got to get square to the rim. And you're probably still moving one way or the other. You're probably still moving a little bit to your left. For him to come up from that right corner, get that shot, there's no dip on that release when he pulls up from there on that three-pointer that put the Heat up 4. It's right off the fingertips. I'm just like, oh wow. Like there's zero hesitation with him on that shot. And all game, he ends up going 3 of 5 from three-point range. If he was a 40% three-point shooter last year, that went down when he started the year in the starting lineup, and he ends up getting pulled, and then he ends up with the DNP-CDs. And there's a lot more to it than the three-point shooting for Nico. But when that three-point shot is going in, he's playing with more joy. He's playing with more energy. And look, Kevin Love as the starter did not work in this game. They basically fell behind in the beginning of the first half and in the beginning of the second. They went down 12 points with Kevin Love in the game in the third quarter. Nikola Jovic comes in and they go on their run right away. And I don't know that it's more. I think it's more Nikola Jovic than it is Kevin Love, even though it wasn't a good Kevin Love game. But Nikola Jovic, what he was able to do, I mean, that I agree with you. I don't know that Tyler Herro is the best player in the game. Nikola Jovic swung the game with everything that he was doing.
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, it's just this is why we've talked about him the way that we have. Like he is such a tantalizing prospect in terms of his potential and the size and the things he can do. But now he's playing with a little bit more oomph, a little bit more aggression, a little bit more confidence. And I think that kind of comes through, not just in the three-point shot, but his drives to the basket, the way he rebounds. There are still moments there where he's not nearly as aggressive because I think he's still more of a perimeter player and maybe not necessarily hunting down boards the way that I'd prefer at his size. But he's tying the skill set together in a way that we haven't seen. Yeah,
and you know what? Maybe my favorite play outside of the game clinching shot at the end, the three-pointer, was he came in the third quarter, immediately posted up Jabari Smith Jr. I'm like, wow. Yeah. Like that was the thing that we heard going into the season, right? That Nikola Jovic wants to post up smaller players. Hey, guess what? Jabari Smith Jr. is not a smaller player. He's the same size, if not maybe an inch taller than Nikola Jovic. And he still said, you know what? I think I got this guy. And then backed him down, posted him up like old school post stuff. How many cookies did you give him?
I gave him 4. So he's tied with
so 4 for Tyler and 4 for Nico. Okay.
And
so
I've got 2. Yeah, for the unsung hero of the game, that's Haywood Highsmith. 6 of 9 from the floor, 3 of 6 from three-point range, 8 rebounds, 15 total points, 2 assists, 3 steals. I mean, 1 block. Like that's an incredibly all over the place stat line for a guy who just continues to put in the work and just, I mean, even Alperen Sengun, who's like 6'11", like that is a legit big man, and he's trying to post up Haywood to no avail. Like he learned his lesson. It's like, you know what, Haywood, for all of his shortcomings, and he's obviously, and he's told us he's 6'5" on a good day. This is a player that you'd think you can take advantage of, but like PJ Tucker before him, he just uses his size, he uses his arm length, he uses his strength as leverage, and he can keep bigger guys from posting up. And maybe the post game is dead to a big degree, but Sengun gets a lot of his points that way when he's dominating, and Haywood just wouldn't give up. He wouldn't give up the space, and he was just all over the place, anticipating balls, in terms of like passing and stuff like that, forcing turnover, doing a great job on Van Vliet or Jalen Green or whoever he got switched onto. He was at some point, it looked like he was guarding everybody, similar to Bam Adebayo. And so not only the fact that he had a great defensive game, but a strong offensive showing as well. That's why I gave him the 2 cookies.
So Dorian Finney-Smith gets traded to the Lakers for 3 second-round picks on Sunday. And Memphis was the other team involved in Dorian Finney-Smith, and they were reportedly offering what sounds like it was going to be a top 17-ish protected first-round pick, John Conchar and Luke Kennard's expiring contract for Finney-Smith. And obviously Brooklyn decided to take the Lakers offer. If you're Memphis, who lost tonight to the Thunder by 24 points, and you're obviously out there looking for a 3-and-D wing stopper, like Haywood Highsmith is the closest thing to Dorian Finney-Smith that we have, I think, in the league in terms of just player prototype, 3-and-D. He's not going to ever really score 20. Like the fact that Haywood scored 15 points feels like a minor miracle. Like, yeah, exactly. It's like that's a monster game. That's like Embiid going for 60. Like that's what that's the equivalent for Haywood Highsmith. But yeah, I don't know if you're Memphis. Like, would you not call Miami and be like, hey, the same offer, same thing that we would have traded for DFS? And I'm not saying that the Heat should do it, but I'm just saying, like, if you're another team around the league, like you're looking at Haywood Highsmith and be like, yeah, that's Dorian Finney-Smith before everybody discovered him, right? Like that's our indie rock band version of Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah, I like the comparison. It's a good call. At the same time, I'm kind of glad that he's flying under the radar as much as he is, that he's still very not a household name in any way. And he's not even kind of known around the league or has that kind of reputation in terms of like fans and even most media members. We used to do trade rankings, like, most tradable player or least tradable players. Like at this point, you can make a pretty strong case that Haywood is one of your least tradable players, because the value of his contract and what he does defensively and offensively when he's shooting the ball as well as he has been. This was a guy who was falling out of the rotation earlier in the season, and he's bounced back and he's been impactful when inserted into the starting lineup and stuff like that. And so you look at his overall impact, and he's always going to be somewhat undersized, and yet still manages to make a defensive imprint on the game. And
it's not a coincidence that he has one of his best games where he's not forced to play power forward. Didn't play a minute of power forward in this game.
I didn't want to say it, but you're absolutely right. Like when you could just have him as the rover, and it's like he's undefined by position. I guess he was ostensibly playing the 3, but he was just kind of
on the perimeter, at least on the perimeter, able to kind of work the perimeter. Exactly.
Right. So it was an impressive game from him, and I think he just continues to show value. You're right, though. I wouldn't be surprised if other top-tier contenders in need of a 3-and-D wing would try to put together some kind of really nice offer, because I think he could be that guy. Like we've seen him pick up everybody from Kevin Durant, and that didn't work necessarily. But again, how many players have stopped Kevin Durant throughout their career? I mean, I remember PJ Tucker. He had that kind of challenge when he was with Milwaukee, right? Everybody knows, like they go back quite a way because they obviously have history from where they're both from, etc. But yeah. But at the same time, like Tucker had the reputation for being the KD stopper. He didn't really stop him, but at least he made him work for his points. And I think you could look at Highsmith being in that same vein in terms of what he brings to the table. So it's good to see, and I'm glad Miami has him on the roster because he does make an impact, and he's such a nice guy, and he does fly under the radar a lot, and a lot of fans probably don't even recognize his impact because he just, to your point, does not put up monster numbers regularly, but his ability to guard players and switch and never really.
He's an elite defender who's shot 40% from 3 last year, and he's up to 44% this year. Like when he shoots it, you expect it to go in. And he's an elite perimeter defender, especially from the corner. So
when he gets in the corner, it's like Tucker. I mean, I've made the comparison 3 times in today's episode, but it's just so similar in the way he's evolved. It's amazing.
Tyler Herro. We talked a little bit about his credit cookies. I want to get back to that because we talk about people flying under the radar. We got to get past this now with Tyler Herro. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna get to our listener questions next here on Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show is to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Let us know in the comment section. Is Haywood Highsmith the least tradable player on the Heat roster? That might be a little extreme. But I think he has maybe the highest trade value. Not the highest, but one of the higher trade value players on the Heat's roster. But I want to talk more about Tyler Herro, who got 4 of your credit cookies here, and I have to agree with you on that. 27 points on 10 of 17 shooting, 3 of 7 from three-point range, 9 assists, 6 rebounds. 3 of those 9 assists came in like the first 5 minutes of this game. His playmaking has gotten so much better this year that obviously so much of the attention on Tyler Herro has to do with the scoring part of it. And specifically this year, when we talk about his all-star case, it's the 3-point shot, the overhauled shooting profile, where it's all threes and stuff at the rim. What he's able to do to get to the basket, he's getting to the free throw line so much more now, which, David, is something that you always talked about with him. He was 4 of 7 from the free throw line tonight. He is so much more physical. He is so much more patient in the paint and by the rim now, where he just knows exactly where he wants to get his shot. He had that slick, like, fake pass, and Dylan Brooks, like, jumped out of his shoes, and then he gets to the rim. We had that fake pass behind him to Alec Burks, and then Alec Burks, you can see him laughing. Like, I thought you were passing me that ball. So it's all the crafty stuff. But I think the playmaking is also so important, especially when Miami. I know Terry Rozier started this game. I don't know that Rozier is going to keep the starting job going forward when Duncan Robinson comes back from the foot injury that was bothering him in this one. But for him to be that point guard, extra facilitator when Jimmy Butler is out there, even when Bam Adebayo is obviously out there facilitating a little bit, that has been that extra layer. Like, if you were questioning whether or not you're going to vote for Tyler Herro as an all-star participant, because you're like, oh, well, the scoring numbers are pretty similar to X, Y, and Z. This is the stuff that should push it over the top. The fact that he's always been a good rebounder for his position, averaging about 5 rebounds per game, and this playmaking part of it, this is the stuff that should push it over the top. Like, to me, Tyler Herro, we're getting to the point now, this guy should be a lock for an all-star spot in the Eastern Conference. He's not going to be a starter, and I'm not even arguing that. But of the 12 all-stars, he should be a lock. Now, obviously, we don't know how it's going to play out. But if you're seriously considering 12 players in the Eastern Conference, you can't tell me that there's 12 players that have been better in the East this year so far.
Yeah, I know we went through this exercise recently, but like, if he's on the schneid with a couple of other guys, like, who do you see as his toughest competition in terms of the backcourt? Like that, you might Cade Cunningham.
Yep,
and he's deserving as well. I mean, so I think they should both get in.
I think, like, because Jalen Brunson's a lock, Damian Lillard's a lock.
Mitchell,
Donovan Mitchell is a lock. So those 3. So Brunson, Lillard, and Mitchell are the locks.
Yeah.
And then I think you get into a conversation with Tyrese Halliburton, Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, Tyler Herro, Darius Garland. Like, you get into all these other guys, Cade Cunningham. Like, multiple of those guys are going to make it. Of the multiple guys, Tyler Herro has to be one of those guys. Like, to me, he's over Cade Cunningham. There's no question. I think Cade's fine. He's had a good year. Tyler Herro's had a better season. He's over him. I would put him in over Garland. I think LaMelo has a games played issue potentially coming here. Trae Young is playing a lot better lately, but his percentages were bad.
Yes.
So Halliburton was on a slow start. He had 30-something points tonight. He's starting to warm up a little bit. So there's other guys, but like, you can fit all those guys in and still have Tyler Herro in there. But let's get to our listener questions here. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions. Thank you to the Locked On Heat Insider community, who gets first dibs at asking these questions for our post-game shows. Also, for free for 14 days, it goes to $4.99 a month after that. Now is the perfect time to sign up because we've got all this Jimmy Butler stuff that we're talking about. And just because Pat Riley releases a statement doesn't mean that we're done reporting on this. So we've got all the rumors and all of our own reporting that we're doing. You can find that on the Locked On Heat Insider community, and you find that with the link in the show notes. But this first question comes from Malachi, who writes in, has Nico become the 6th man now on this team? It feels like he's our best player off the bench right now. 6th man Nikola Jovic. What do you think?
I almost feel like, knock on wood here, or I wish I had some kind of superstition about this, because I don't want to jinx it, because we've seen bad Nico to start the season, and we're seeing a much better version of him. But I think Malachi's absolutely right. With Jaime taking a step back and possibly dealing with injury, the inconsistency from other players, like, you like what Burks provides, but that's Alec Burks, and Terry Rozier obviously has not been good, even coming off the bench. He's had moments here and there, but mostly not as consistent or productive. At this point, I think you can make a pretty strong argument that he has been Miami's best bench player. And look, I mean, I know a lot of people look at this team and say, oh, there's problems with the depth and things of that sort. I actually think it's a strength. You'd like to see players being more consistent in these reserve roles, specifically Khalil Ware, I think, Terry Rozier, and Jaime. You'd like to see them be much more productive. But if Jaime is not dialed in, or he's not got, if he doesn't have it going, then you could look at Nico and say, this is a guy who you trust, given his skill set and his size and everything else like that. He can bring the ball up court. He can create off the dribble. had some incredible passes today. I don't know what he finished with in terms of assists, but he had some really, really nice
He had that
passes
pass
today.
to Haywood Highsmith in the corner where
Whipping
he
into the
whips
corner,
it with
yeah.
his right arm. You know, there was a defender just like right in the literally standing in the passing lane, and he just gets it to go with this on this crazy arm angle.
He has been shades of Luka Magic, you know, that was really nice in that pass.
Yeah, it was Luka. It's a great comp. Look, he's Miami's best bench player right now. I know that. And so, yeah, if he's your sixth man or whatever it is, I think there's a lot of value there. I also think maybe we stop trying to shoehorn him into the starting lineup. He tends to play better coming off the bench as sort of this energy guy. And I like that, right? Like if you go double big and eventually we get to a point, and we got this question coming up here in a second, where you get to Bam and Kel'el Ware as your starting front court, then having Nico coming in as a guy who can play alongside either one of them, it kind of has like this Nas Reed element to it. And like, I think by the end, like in 2 years, people in Miami will be getting Nikola Jovic tattoos. So I do think that like there's a why can't we have nice things part of this where, okay, he's playing really well off the bench. Now, do we have to start him? No. If he's playing really well off the bench, let him continue to play really well off the bench because he's swung this game. And if you could just find an alternative to those Kevin Love minutes to start the game, where they're not such negatives, then I think you really got something there. I like what Nikola Jovic told the broadcast too after the game. He said that Eric Spoelstra had a conversation with him and said, "Hey, look, you're in your third season. You're not a kid anymore. You have to be more consistent." And he's like, he's right. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 21 years old. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. But
that makes me feel old. Then if that's not being a kid anymore, it's like, well, what the hell am I? You know, that's
you know, I've seen a lot on this planet in my 21 years, and I can officially say I am no longer a kid because I can go to a store and buy some beer now.
A year and a half ago, he was telling me about getting his first car and getting a driver's license. It's like, now he's not a kid anymore. It's like, all right, dude.
They grow up so fast, David. They really do.
I know.
They grow up so fast.
Proud dad.
Flavio writes in, Kel'el Ware is ready to play. Spo should put him and Bam together. Why hasn't Spo tried them together yet? I think we're almost there. I'm thinking we're almost there. I bet Eric Spoelstra had the thought at halftime because he knew the Kevin Love minutes weren't working, and he puts him out there. And I even tweeted this, and I said I think Eric Spoelstra knows that the starting lineup doesn't work and he can't use it, but he very rarely changes the starting lineup in the middle of a game, like from one half to the next. So I thought, you know, obviously that Kevin Love was going to start the second half. I think I tweeted that I would have thought about starting Nikola Jovic, and like the more I thought about it, I was like, maybe he thought about starting Kel'el Ware there. I don't know, but I think we're I think we're getting close, is all I'm going to say.
It feels like it was also a numbers game. Like, you know, having traded Thomas Bryant to Indiana, you're kind of missing what would be a key backup position at the center spot there. And so if Bam gets into foul trouble or something else, you kind of need somebody. And Ware's still, you know, a center who might get into foul trouble on occasion there. And with Love struggling, I feel, again, you know, his best role right now is Bam's backup. And you don't have any other alternative. You just don't have anybody else that you can put in that spot because Kevin Love has just looked mostly playable between the time he's missed or the fact that he's, you know, as old as he is and still kind of struggling to kind of find his rhythm. And you hope that he can find it at some point this season, but you kind of need somebody who's a little bit more competent. And so I think right now you look at Khalil and you say, well, he's the option. He's the guy. And so,
you almost can't start him because if you've decided that Kevin Love is unplayable at this point, then you only have two centers on the roster. And we've seen Eric Spoelstra experiment with Nico as a backup five. He doesn't want to do that. That's sort of more of a necessity type thing or weird sort of lineups. Against Atlanta, they did it because Atlanta will play Larry Nance Jr. at center. So it's not like really, like, it's more like nobody has a center in those lineups. So I think that's fair. But then I go back to this, like, okay, you could start Bam with Ware, and then just let's say Ware or Bam subs out at 6 minutes in the first quarter, like he's been doing. Then you just slide Kel'el Ware to center, and you put Nico in there at the 4. And then when Bam comes back in, he comes in for Kel'el Ware, and now Bam's playing with Nico. So like Nico is just sort of your backup big, who is coming in and allowing Kel'el Ware to kind of move back to, or Bam to move back to center later on in the game. So there's ways to maybe do it.
Minutes restriction? Like, I mean, And we know conditioning is going to be an issue at 7 feet tall, and it was earlier. And you looked at Ware, and he'd never been fleet of foot, but he looked a little sluggish, and he was having a hard time kind of keeping up and stuff like that. Like he hasn't played more than 17 minutes in any one game that I can recall.
It's interesting.
So I don't know that he might just not be able to play 20 plus minutes per game yet. And
or
I
30
know
minutes like a starter. Yeah. So that's totally fair. I hadn't thought about that. It doesn't actually have to be as a starter either, or it doesn't have to be as a starter. Like you could find minutes in the game to maybe put them on the court together at the same time too. So I don't know. I do think that we're getting closer to maybe experimenting with it more. But the one thing that we do know with Eric Spoelstra in regards to Kel'el Ware or just rookie centers in general, he's very patient with rookies at that position. And if right now this is working with what they're doing, and I think that's fine. I don't anticipate Kevin Love being the full-time starter at power forward. I think this was just a one-off. Duncan Robinson was out. They needed to add more size to the lineup, especially if they were going to go with Terry Rozier. They couldn't go that small with like Jaime and Haywood and Bam with Terry and Tyler because you just needed a little bit more size. He puts out Kevin Love, who obviously also provides spacing. So that was basically, I think, the calculus there. Last thing before we sign off here. Tyler Herro telling reporters about the fight. Quote, and this is from Anthony Chang on Twitter from Miami Herald. Quote, I guess that's what happens when someone is scoring, throwing dimes, doing the whole thing. I'd get mad too.
Oh,
I love it. Love it from Tyler Herro. Big Miami Heat win. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.